everybody. Welcome to the January community demo feedback. We got quite a few here, so we're going to give this our best shot and churn through them. All right. I'm going to start with you, Caleb. Oops. Okay, let's see here. Mix and master sound good. There's a couple of small imbalances here. I think your sub frequency, it's really good. It's really strong. It might even be too strong. If you wanted to get it a little bit louder, you could reduce that and turn up the volume otherwise. Beyond that, I think the drop sounds good. I think it needs some sort of an on-beat ride. It just sounds a little bit empty in the high percussion. So like when the kick and the snare is hitting, like a ride on that. It would also be good. Your fake out was really strong. It doesn't really explode the way that I feel like it should. Like, you know, you really built tension all the way up through here. And then the drop just kind of like, it barely hits, you know, like at that first beat. Like that first beat of the drop really is everything. You want that to just fucking smack. That's what gets people going crazy. And right now it's just like a slight little bump instead of a smack. So, you know, there's some things that you could do there, such as just adding in crashes, adding in like impacts, stuff like that, just to kind of make that thing explode. It's also about building tension the right way throughout the fake out. And I really liked the pre-drop vocal that you used, and just that little cut where it just goes like I'm right there before the drop. I feel like could be better. It could be improved in order to just continue building that tension and like building that hype throughout the fake out. So that's pretty much it. Now that's most of my comments through the drop. The other thing I was going to say, I don't know for sure the sidechain. This is kind of preference. The sidechain is solid. It might be a little bit too long. It's kind of got that old school bass house feel, whereas I do feel like you're trying to aim for like a new school bass house thing. The old school bass house tracks have longer, wider side chains that kind of have the, whereas the new ones are very snappy, quick side chains. So, you know, something to keep in mind there. Now, the only other comment I have is regarding the arrangement. I do feel as if the first bit here is underwhelming. There's just really nothing to attach to. It's almost like there's sounds here because there need to be, but they're not really doing anything. The important question to ask when we're producing and we're working on the arrangement is what purpose do these sounds serve? And what purpose do these sections serve as well? If the answer is just simply because there's something that needs to be there before the drop, that's not necessarily a sufficient answer, if you kind of get where I'm coming from with that. So I would say maybe try to work on some elements here to really bring the listener in, some lead focal elements of sorts, to make sure that the listener is just honed in on what you're doing here before the excitement, if that makes sense. Very, very important to keep the listener engaged throughout the whole track, whether it's the drop or not. Current EDM and dubstep culture in particular is so fixated on the drop that people don't even give a fuck about the beginning parts of the song, the other parts of the song, but they're equally as important. And it's very important to develop those. So that's my best recommendation there. So very good work. Excellent job here. Hopefully that gives you some help to take it to the next spot. All right, next we're going to go to Brave. $5:30. Okay. All right, let's see what you got here, Brave. Okay, give me a second. I'm going to reread that once I get this in here. Okay. First remix going on Spotify. Friend is a small artist. He's doing a remix of one of mine in return. Open to your opinion on how to go about sharing the money spent in promo push on shared projects like this. I don't necessarily understand the question. I think you might be asking how to share what money that you guys are going to spend to promote the tracks. Might that be accurate? In which case, I don't really have any sort of insight. I've never spent any money promoting any of my music. So I can't really attest to that. I'm trying to think of what else you might mean. Allow me real quick to just sift through this and see if I have any comments. Okay, so I really only have a couple of comments here on this, which it might be completely irrelevant because you might be done with it, which comes from what you suggested. In the event that you're not, here's my couple pieces of feedback. I think everything sounds really good. It's really well put together. Mix and master sounds good. Arrangement is fine. I'm a little bit bored by the intro, but that could just be completely subjective. It does what it's supposed to. So I get it. It's got to be kind of long and drawn out, but it is a relatively long period of time to go with, you know, that more melancholy type sound. So it's just a little bit slow for my preference, but I think it's fine as is. It's not really anything like worth stressing over. The drop is solid. The one thing that I notice is that the sub tends to, it's like sometimes it's getting pushed down, other times it's rising up. So like its level varies. Sometimes it's rising above this -6 level. Sometimes it's falling below it. So something there is not permitting that to maintain its own level. and just something that you should be aware of, as that could create problems later. But it sounds really good. The synths sound really good. The mix sounds really good. So I don't really have any comments there. And yeah, unfortunately, I don't really have much that I can say in regards to my opinion on sharing the money spent in promo push. Just again, because I've never done it. Every single time I've released a song, all the promo has been natural and organic, or it's done by the label, in which most of the labels don't spend money on promo either. So in time, maybe that's something that will change, but I've never spent money because I've found that the return is just absolutely negligible. So my apologies there. That's probably an underwhelming answer, but hopefully that at least gives you some insight that you might not need to spend any money. All right. Moving forward, let's go to Dream Ryder here at 10:40. All right, Dream Ryder, let's see what you got for me today. See if this one's both emotional. Feel like you're Cyberpunk Night City. Okay. Curious on the idea, the feel, but also the kick and the drop and the chords, songwriting throughout. Yep, you got it. Let's see what we got. Very excited. Sorry, give me 1 second. All right. Okay, first comment right out of the gates, that background ambient sound is dissonant with the chords and the key of the song so far. It gave the impression it was going to be something very dark toned, but it's not, and now there's a little bit of clashing going on between that and the chords that are coming into this section. So I'll keep listening and disregard it, but that's my first note. Really good flow and progression going on throughout this so far. I like the way that it's evolving with the track. It's keeping me engaged. Okay, so I don't really have any technical issues with it. The issues that I mostly have are writing-wise. I don't believe... So the chord progressions in these sections were fine. When you get to the drop, the chord progression kind of disappears. It becomes very scattered. It kind of starts doing its own thing. The bass line doesn't follow any sort of linear progression. It kind of just goes around and does a thing. And that kind of leaves it feeling emotionally bland. There's really no emotional draw to it because those chords that create that emotion aren't present. They were kind of left behind. So also there's a number of, and I can't pinpoint every single one, but I do know that there's at the moment there's a handful of them. There's some musical discrepancies going on here where the notes that it's playing, whether in the bass line or in the melody, I couldn't exactly pinpoint it, are out of key. So I would try to hone in on those things. Those will just bring it to the next level fairly easily. I get the vibe that you're going for in the track. I think it's a more simple, straightforward track. But right now it's kind of just lacking that simplicity that it needs by maintaining the chord progression. I wouldn't do a new chord progression. I would bring the same chord progression and bass line that were over here and flesh that out into this drop as it was. Just keep that going. Your sounds in the drop are fresh enough that you can keep that same chord progression without penalizing or without being penalized by the listener for not keeping it interesting. You did a great job of keeping it interesting throughout. However, like I said, the drop rate here is just not really all the way built out the way it needs to be musically. So that's really all that I would focus on. Aside from that, there's really no issues. I don't think it's as strong of a mix down as some of your previous ones the last 2 months that I've heard, but there's nothing objectively wrong with it. I think it's just the characteristics of the sounds are just a little bit less polished, if that makes sense. But that does happen from time to time. Unfortunately, as producers, we can't execute perfection every single time. There are instances where, like for example, to give you anecdotal, a remix that I just did this week, I am so less than thrilled with the way that the mix down turned out. Even though I did my best, it just, after a number of revisions, it doesn't really hit the same way some of my older ones do, or ones I've done in previous weeks. And that's just kind of the name of the game sometimes. So it's ultimately okay, but I just wanted to give you that piece of honest feedback. So yeah, but that's really where we're at with this one. I like the idea, I like the execution, but there's some musical discrepancies that really do need to be addressed before this one can continue forward. And I think that will help take it to a new height, and you will feel the same way. So very good work as always. This is still a step in the right direction for you, and it's very, very good to see you continuing on the right path. So great work. Okay, let's move forward to Hunter at 17:30. Okay. Oh, right on, man. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, they wanted to do Dark Star, and it did sell out very far in advance. So very unfortunate. More than likely, probably didn't get to grab the tickets, but I don't think I got. If I did, I was so tired that night. So if we did get to meet, I apologize. But all right, let's see what you got here. Lost somewhere. right, real quick. Okay, so I think there's some very easy things to this that can be fixed. First things first, I like it. I'm a big fan of like the experimental bass aspects of it. There are some things that are either too experimental or flawed, in my opinion, that can be easily addressed. So I think let's start from the beginning. The intro, I like the vocal. I think that you could do a better job of surrounding the vocal with melodic elements to kind of build that musical tension appropriately. It just didn't really seem like it was connected, like the musical elements that were in there. So I'd maybe recommend, like to be very straightforward, maybe like a piano with like a chord progression behind it in the correct key, which seems like D minor. That's the key that the vocal is in, and that will really help to build that tension properly before you get to the drop. Now, in the drop, I love the sounds. I love the soundscapes. I think everything in there is great. Oh, the other thing is that this ambience in the background, it feels slightly out of key or just not really adequately complementary to the other sounds. That's the one other thing I want to point out. Now, in the drop, the big issue is that the bass kind of moves around. It's not really playing like a progression or anything. At least it doesn't seem like it. I would highly encourage you to keep the bass at the root note, again, which would be D minor here. I see it going down to like, I think it's like A or A sharp a lot, or whatever, B flat, and it doesn't really have any reason to. I think it would be best left at D, the D root note, sub note. And that will make it feel the most musically in line and kind of help keep things on track. I'm not in love with this section. It doesn't really make sense. It doesn't complement the journey that the song starts on and then proceeds on with this section. It kind of feels like a really hard left turn and doesn't coordinate with the rest of the track. So I don't think that you need it. Ultimately, I would say it would be best to take it out or change it and elongate this section rather than jut into this section, because it feels like it's doing something that it doesn't need to do, and also it doesn't really work that well. It's kind of trying to incorporate like an element of heaviness into where it is, but it doesn't get the job done. And rather than try to continue down that path, I don't think the song needs that path, so I would just remove it. That's my honest 2 cents on that. I think you're very, very close to being at a really good place with this, but there's just those small fundamental pieces that need to be ironed out for it to fully connect, and at that point, I believe it will. So very good stuff. Great work. Excited to hear where this one goes. I'm a big fan of what this can be. All right. We're going to move on to Jonis here at 23:30. All right, Jonis, let's see what you got here. Oh, right on, man. Yeah, it was. We were listening to your set from the green room. It's awesome. Okay, let's see here. Gonna download this guy. Also, Marcel and Freddie wanted me to make a joke towards you, and I'm not going to. But just know that they are trying to get me to bully you, and I'm not going to do that. All right, let's get it.
It's been so long, I've been out of my body with you. I feel alone, feel at home, feel like nothing is true. She took me to a place where my senses gave way. Shutting round, shutting down what the people say. Climbing up, killing time, let them give you some. Take my hand and let it come, let it come, let it come. Take it back when she knows that you're doing it.
So I say you wanted the second drop, so I'm gonna jump to that real quick. Okay, so a couple comments here. Very, very, very close. There's a few things that I think can still be improved upon. The vocal in this section is, I think it's being drowned out purposefully because you don't want it to stand out too much, because you kind of don't really want that to be the focal point, but it sounds not deliberately neglected, but more so accidentally neglected. So I think it's important to maybe, what I would do is I would maybe put like a Siem effects on that vocal here in the drop and do something like this to kind of make it different from like earlier in the track. And I would bring it up and out. I think it needs to stand out more. Otherwise it just sounds like it's not as loud as it should be. The kick drum here, nothing wrong with the kick drum, but it feels very isolated. This track doesn't yet have that explosion that it needs. So like when it hits, I think maybe like a crash or something. I think I hear like an on-beat ride in there, but it's not like sitting on top the way that it should, if that makes sense. It's kind of just sitting behind everything, and I want to hear something to give it that bounce as well as give it that impact. So like when this drops, I want it to hit. Right now, it just kind of pops a little bit, if that makes sense. But it's got a slam, you know what I'm saying? So that's kind of the piece that I have. Let me... Also right there, the bass drops right here. I would recommend putting the kick under there too. You always want the bass to drop with a kick. It's very, very difficult to do otherwise. I would bring that ride up a little bit more. It's very, very quiet, the offbeat ride. I'd bring that up more. And again, I can't tell if there's an on-beat ride there or not, but if not, I think there definitely should be. But this definitely sounds nice and tight. I just think it needs a couple odds and ends improved for it to have the proper energy. So hopefully this kind of gets you on the right track there. But I'm liking this a lot. It's just got a couple little things that I think we can do to step it up a couple notches, and then it'll be really banging. Very good work, man. All right, we're going to move on to Ryan. All right, Ryan, let's see what you got. Ryan, you're going to be at 2846. All right, Ryan. Okay. Let's see what we got.
High crash fight. I got you fucking deep.
Like a nigga don't dance, but he make moves. They fuck around, now a nigga gotta shame you. I'm shameless, I be rocking on my chains too. They tell me, boy, I think the money start to change you. Not save you, but save you. Remember running through the city in the same shoes. Now I'm gunning in the Benz and the range too. I'm on point, no a nigga never take two. They said I couldn't reach Mars, so I turned to a stop. Now I might have fucked around, might have raised up the bar. Now I'm talking cash, talk cash, all on my pump. My nigga Cash said, watch what they do for the ones. I know she wanna be popping all over the gram. When the cameras come out, wanna hold my head. Must be out of your mind, you know who I am. Man, you killing my rhyme, you know who I am, yeah. out strong. Still coming out strong. Take my kindness for weakness. Still coming out strong. Still coming out strong. Still coming out.
Okay, I think I have the notes that you need. Let's start with the intro and this arrangement that you had commented on. So ultimately what it comes down to is that you picked a vocal reference to map the structure around that has a very, very long verse. I believe it's, I don't know, it might be 32 bars of verse. It's a long one. There's a lot of verse content in there, and it's going to be very difficult because the song that you picked is almost like, it's like a sung song, but it's almost like a rap verse type situation. It's like one of the Weeknd's kind of hybrid tracks, sort of. It's long, and there's really no way to make something that is objectively long feel shorter or more interesting. There's little bits and pieces and tactics that we can do, and ultimately that comes down to slowly adding elements as the song progresses, which it kind of seems like you picked all your elements out of the gate and then just let them stay there the whole time, rather than, what I would say is, if you want to keep this arrangement, start stripping those elements away and then slowly adding them in as time moves on before you ultimately get to your shift right here with the which kind of changes the instrumental arrangement right here, which is good. So that's my best recommendation there. The chords in this track have a lot of improvement that needs to be made. The progression is not, first off, it's not proper right now. There's a lot of discrepancies going on where some notes in either the chords or the bass line are out of key, or they're not agreeing with each other. So I would encourage you to look up some chord progressions to potentially use, as well as utilize, if you have Ableton 11, utilize this scale function right here. Figure out the key that you're working in, which I could tell you off the bat is F minor, or at least it should be F minor. And make sure that all of your notes are correct in here. This button right here will assure you that all of your notes are in scale. If they're not, when you enter this mode, you'll see like a gray line on a note that is out of key. So make sure that they're all in scale. Now, having everything in scale doesn't assure that you have a good, strong emotional chord progression. Those are things that music theory kind of gets into, but I don't have musical theory knowledge, so I can't really advise you there. My best recommendation would just be to look up chord progressions and see what you can work in, if doing the scale trick doesn't help you get to where you need to be. Beyond that, the drop, same thing. There's some musical issues going on there. The chord progression is just not all the way what it should be, and there's some disagreements going on musically. Further, with that big portamento sign, I'm not sure what exactly is going on with. There's like that sound, and then there's like a almost like a pad or like an ambience or like a vocal bed in the background or something like that. And they're also disagreeing with each other. One of those two elements further has some pretty aggressive mud, because when the drop hits, it gets pretty muddy and pretty gross down in that muddiness range, like in the lower frequencies range. And I can't figure out exactly what is going on there, but there's definitely some sort of issue. So make sure that you're high passing your lead sounds and your chords and all that fun stuff. The only thing that should have those low sub frequency informations is your sub itself. Even your mid basses need high passed around at the lowest 100 hertz. The leads I would recommend higher, as high as you can without eliminating the frequency information there. Get rid of all that lower noise that's being created there. But yeah, there's some musical discrepancies going on in there. Those leads or the lead and that vocal bed are fighting, and the chords and the bass line are not always fully in agreement, and the chords aren't playing a progression that is, it's not emotionally resonant. So I would really advise you to work on building that, because there's no way around it. Musical discrepancies are musical discrepancies and need to be addressed for it to sound proper. So that's the best thing that can be done here. And there's a couple little bits and pieces with the mix down beyond what I had said with the mud, but it's too hard to get into that because when things disagree musically, they also create massive mix issues. And I do believe that to be happening right now. So we can't even really dig into that until those musical issues are reprimanded. So that's where I would start. Hopefully that gives you a good point to kind of go in and try to hone in on. And then from there, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to work out some of those other kinks and get it to the next level. So, but very good job. Thank you for submitting. And we're going to move on to Sean. All right, 3650 for Sean. Okay. Okay, I don't have really many comments on the mix down. I think there's a couple little elements here and there that could potentially be cleaned up a little bit, but I can't really identify exactly what they are. It just seems like there might be some clashing frequencies in that low range somewhere. I don't know what might be causing it, whether it's the brass or whatever it is, but it's like it might not... It's not all that important. I do think that the songwriting here, I think the idea is strong, as you had suggested. The execution might be what's causing this. And it's hard to pinpoint what exactly the answer is. I maybe have some ideas. I could tell you what occurs to me, and potentially create some feedback off of that. So the beginning section almost seems like it should be like a fake out of sorts. And then so it's, you got two elements here. You got the call and the response. The call is the section with the brass, and the horns and all that shit. And then, you have the response, which is like that bass womp sound that's going on. And the call and the response are both underwhelming at their role. So the call is kind of supposed to be building tension, if that makes sense. And it's not really doing that. It's hard to quantize exactly what would make it do that. But it's not really building tension right now. It's kind of just acting as its own thing. And further, the response isn't capitalizing on any tension being built because, say for example, the call did build massive amounts of tension. The response would be ideally supposed to capitalize on that tension. But right now, it's not necessarily doing that. I have a few more hunches as to why that is than why the call is not building tension the way it's supposed to. First things first, we will readdress the call. My best guess is that it's because it almost feels like it's supposed to be like a fake out or like almost like a build type scenario going on with it. But it's not really doing that. It's got the dubstep drums in there. So it's hard to exactly say what it needs, but that's my best guess, is that it's almost acting like a fake out in a way, but it has those drums in there, so it's not really acting like one. A really good reference for this track would be Damn by Joyride. That might be one of your inspirations. I can't tell, but it definitely seems like it could be derived from that. And the way that brass hits is very, very similar. Joyride does it where it has like an even beat during the fake out, dun 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 dun, and then the response section drops in very aggressively and hard after that. So perhaps something you could take notes on. So again, like I said, the call is harder to address, but the response, let's look at that real quick. So first things first, there should be some sort of tangible transition point here. So either like a fill or something where it's noticeably transitioning from this section to the next. So do or something like that. And then moving into this response section. So just wanted to communicate that first. There should be some sort of transition. So this section, I think the reason why it's not capitalizing is because it feels very empty. There's things going on with these sounds where there's a lot of empty space occurring. So you can see that sound hits. There's no carry afterwards whatsoever. It just hits and then it's gone. And even though you have that vocal bed in the background, there's not really anything sustaining, and therefore it's losing its energy and its tension. Harder to solve. There's a couple of things that you could do. Changing the rhythm is one to make it more full. Another example would be taking a resample and then putting like reverb on it, and then essentially using a reverb tail right here to fill that space. That's another thing that you could do. But I don't know that either of those would be that effective. I don't know that this pattern here in the response is as strong as it needs to be to accomplish that goal in general. And that's just me trying to be real for the sake of constructive criticism. I can't put my finger exactly on what it is, but it's not doing that. It's not that crazy, insane response that it needs to be in order to get people hyped and moving, if that makes sense. It just falls a little bit flat. So my qualm with my feedback here for you on this is that I'm struggling to provide you with examples of what to do. I can really here only tell you what the issues that I see with it are. And I usually try to give recommendations as to what you can do, but this one is a little bit perplexing because it's, I agree with you that the idea is strong, and execution is very, very important, and somehow that execution is just not quite there. To identify where you are right now as a producer, I can pretty easily do by listening to this track. And what I would do if I were you is I would put this track on the shelf. I don't think that right now you're going to be able to make that much progress to it. What I would advise is working on other songs for the next couple of months, and trying to develop your skill set and your intuition naturally with how songs like this can flow and go. And I think that will really help you be able to come back to this one in time and give it that proper execution that really can't be replaced, outside of just putting raw man hours into producing and figuring out how things can get more interesting, if that makes sense. So that's my best advice for you for this one, and hopefully that's okay. I hope this gives you some insight and help. And I agree with you that the idea is really strong, and I think that it can definitely be something special in the future, so I want to ensure that you get it there. But very good. We're going to move on to Brendan. First, I'm going to take a break, and I will be right back in a handful of minutes. BRB. All right, we're back at it. Let's move forward with Brendan at 59.30. Okay. All right. Sorry, I had an email pop up. This is Killstorm. So this. Is this correct? Yeah. Okay, this section sounds better than the one before it, and let me tell you why. That lead being so high, it feels a little thin. What tends to happen is that it neglects that space in between the two things, the bass line / the chords in that lead. What I would advise doing is duplicating that lead channel, dropping or freezing and flattening it, and dropping that lead by 1 octave on the second channel, lowering the decibels by 10 decibels, and then putting a hard stereo on it. And that will fill out a lot of that space, and with a lower octave, and it's barely noticeable to the listener, but it really, really helps fill out that space and make it feel less thin. This section feels better because you got that little saw wave underneath going around. Snare there's a little noisy. I'd maybe trim that out. It just feels a little airy and noisy and harsh. Okay, so here's the thing. It sounds really, really good. It's missing this range, and because of that, it feels just a little bit empty, and I think that might be why. So there's like white noise just constantly spraying the whole time. I would advise removing that. It makes it feel hissy and doesn't do the job I think it was intended to do, which is just fill that space. I would advise removing that and finding other vehicles to fill that space, whether that be a very subtle reverb channel going on in there, or something of that sort, I would advise filling the space alternatively as opposed to just having that white noise spray sustaining rather. And I think the mid bass needs to come up a little bit. It's very absent right now. I think something in this range, either a layer should be added or brought up via EQ to just fill that space a little bit more. And that's kind of what I'm thinking will do the job there. Any sort of a sustain would feel really good on top of that. Like a tonal, like wee or something of that sort, would just feel really, really, really good if it was mixed in properly on top of those sounds. But yeah, this is sounding really good. I don't think I have any other feedback beyond that. I like the stompiness of it. The mix and master is really solid. And yeah, I just think those couple little things will make a heck of a difference. And that's pretty much all it needs. So excellent work. Hopefully that gives you some help. All right, we're going to move on to Malefik. All right, let's see what you got for us this time. I put your timestamp in. Let's do 106. Okay, let's get this downloaded. I like that riff. I feel like this section might do well by having a sub frequency. It just feels a little bit empty for how much is going on. Build-up sounds excellent.
I'll write it and we'll do it live. Click, 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 click.
Okay, I have one beef with this and one beef with this only. It sounds really good, plenty loud. You did a great job with the loudness. The mix sounds awesome. The sounds are all very clean and crunchy. My one qualm is that this guitar riff is in the key of... sounds like B, and then this section...
click, 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 click.
E. E minor. B minor to E minor. Which I understand why you did it. Because it would be very, very difficult to get the sub bass to hit in B minor. That being said, what I would advise is pitching the guitar up until it's in E, because it just felt very it feels like two different songs right now, just because of the nature of that key shift. So that's pretty much... Sorry, drinking Mountain Dew. It's pretty much all I got, because this thing sounds really banging otherwise. I don't have any other feedback. It's very, very well done. Plenty loud enough, but in a good way. Like, it's not overdone. It's very, very, like, crunchy in a awesome way. Very advanced mix down, so good for you on that, man. This shit bangs. And that's pretty much all that I have in regard to that. Everything else sounds good. Mix master check. Overall flow, check. Really liked it. Arrangement, just that key switch is the only thing bugging me, and everything else is doing great. Good for you, man. This is awesome. All right, we're going to move on to 109.30. We got Peter Delff. All right, let's see what you got. Got it.
There is no need for me to destroy you. Surrender. Surrender your world.
Listen to the reference real quick. Off the bat, I don't really think there's that many things wrong with this. I have a couple comments, but that's, I want to hear this first.
Into your world. Into your world.
Sorry, give me 1 second. All right. Okay. So here's what I think is going on here. This really doesn't sound that bad. I think the drums are louder than the other sounds. I think the sounds need to be louder.
Into your world.
That kick is definitely like, it sounds like it's hitting something. I don't know if it's clipping or if it's hitting a limiter or what's going on, but it definitely sounds like it's hitting something and not in necessarily a good way. I think you might be using a limiter. It sounds kind of like here. I would advise doing a clipper instead. That's going to give you more of that crunch that you're looking for. The other thing with that Yaks Party Starter song is it's got really prominent high percussion. Right now, yours does not have very prominent high percussion. So notably, the offbeat ride / hi-hat is going boom, snap, boom, snap, boom, snap. And yours does not have that at all right now. It's just boom, clap, boom, clap. So you need that offbeat ride. Secondly, I think there's like an on-beat hat that has a very slight delay there on that Party Starter track. that I think it needs to be in yours as well. Like it's like a hat with like a 6 or 7 millisecond delay. And that kind of creates that high percussion on that kick drum. But it's delayed a little bit, but it creates like a snapping sound. Those are the two big things. And aside from that, I think your sounds need to come up in volume a bit. But this track is just kind of missing that crunch, and that almost makes me feel like there's like a limiter being used here, and a clipper would definitely add a little bit more oomph to it. So let me see if I can like try to get that oomph going on here. G clip. So that's a little bit crunchier, like I think what you might be looking for, and that's up another 4 decibels. So that might get you closer to what you want to be. I think you need more crunch, and then those things I mentioned prior, and you'll be where you want to be. So, but overall, the mix down is very good. It's just you're missing that smack factor, I think. All right, good stuff, man. Gonna move on to Siem real quick. I gotta see where we're at. Okay. Moving on to Siem here. 115. All right, Siem, let's see what you got. First question, if you prefer the master tracks for feedback, so far I've just been sending mixed demos without mastering. I would say as close as you can get to the final is best, because hearing everything that you have to offer working in one place is definitely best for me to give feedback to, especially if the master could potentially use advice. Also, because the mix and the master kind of work together, certain things that might be problematic in the mix won't be apparent until the master is there. So it's definitely something where I would advise having them mastered. For this track, the drums for the build-up feel kind of awkward. Tips on how to change the arrangement. The build-up sounds good. Okay, yeah, let's see what you got here.
Heard you call, I'm reaching out to feel alive, to make it mine.
Sounds
Now I won't be wondering
really solid.
why you found a way to show me all my life. I heard you call, I'm reaching out to feel alive, to make it mine. And now I won't be wondering why you found a way to show me all my light. All the way to the midnight hour. All the way we go. All the way, we're gonna fly out and run it wild until the midnight hour. Until the midnight hour. All the way to the midnight.
Sorry, I swallowed wrong. Hang on. Oh, fuck. Sorry, that really fucked me up. All right. Anyway. I think the awkwardness, I see what you're saying. I think it's just sample selection. I would maybe pick a snare, throw a reverb on the snare, throw an OTT after the reverb, and have that be the snare. Then cut off the rest of the tail from where the kick hits. And then also pick a different kick. I think the samples themselves are just awkward in the placement that they're in. They need to fulfill a certain role, and they're definitely not filling that role. So I would just try new samples.
Until the midnight hour. All the way to the midnight hour. All
There might be a note in this chord that's incorrect. I can't really tell, but I'll tell you this. The bass here should be dropped down an octave. It's playing a D1 right now, or a C sharp one. I can't tell. Let me see. Fuck. Yeah, it's playing a D1, which is right there. It needs to be that deeper one. That's going to make it hit way harder. Same thing right there. That one needs to be deeper. That's an F that's playing a high F. It needs to be playing that low F.
Until the midnight hour. All the way to my, until the midnight hour. Until the midnight.
All right, we're going to focus on this drop first real quick and just finish up. So this is, it's lacking a little bit of, God, I'm still choking. Fuck me. Still lacking a little bit of high percussion. I think there needs to be something like Ivory has some really good loops. Ivory top.
Until the midnight hour.
So it's not synced, so it's not going to sound that good, but that are going to hit and just give it more of that bounce. I really think it needs some better high percussion going on in there. That'll help fill it out. Also, those low notes, that's a really good starting point. Beyond that, there's really not much else. The mixdown is actually pretty solid right now. Let's move forward. So this second drop, I want to spend some time here because I hear some things.
Until the
So this song is an F major. When you drop it, I would change the sub note down to a D. A D. D minor is the minor relative of F major, whatever the fuck. I can't remember what it is. But anyways, D minor. So I'd change the sub note to D minor, and it's going to hit a lot harder. Same thing regarding the high percussion here in this section. Also, I think that snare needs to come up a bit. Yeah, snare needs to come up considerably here. It's much too quiet. This section right here. It almost sounds like it's like sample tripping, as if there's like it's a resample and it has like a warp mode on. It feels a little bit unorthodox. So it's just something to keep in mind. It feels a little bit awkward, but that's mostly. I think the kick drum needs to come up too. The drums just overall in this section don't hit as hard as they need to, so I would get those guys cranked up quite a bit. Get that high percussion in there. Change that sub note, and I think that's enough for right now. I think that's a good starting point for fixes to this song, and then beyond that we can move forward if you'd like to. But I think that's a good starting point right now without dumping too much on you. There's some little bits and pieces here and there, like volumes that aren't mixed well. Like there's some incidental sounds that pop up from time to time where the volume isn't level where it should be, but those are very small things. You might be able to fish around and see if you can hear them afterwards, but start with those things, and then from there I think it'll sound substantially better. So good stuff, very good starting point there. Awesome work. All right, we're gonna move forward to Rens Van. All right, let's see Rens van. Okay, what do we got? Faster, no master. Okay, so drop content is really solid and I enjoy it. I think that's good. Regarding the mix, there's a couple pieces here and there. I think that the sub volume is too loud when you do try to master. That's going to give you issues. So for example, you want a dubstep track like this to be over -4 LUFS. So if I go and grab a G clip and just push it up until it gets to 4 LUFS, I guarantee that sub's going to make it distort. So here we go with my LUFS meter. Right now we're at like -9. Like 10-ish, yep. So you see that sub is just slamming. I would maybe dial that back a bit. It needs to be, you can get it over -6, that's good enough. But yours can definitely have capacity for more, so you could try up around in there. But the sound sounds really good and clean, but that's gonna give you some issues currently in the mix down. My biggest qualms are back here. You know, there's nothing objectively wrong, but the intro just doesn't have any pieces that like grab me and pull me in. It just feels like there's an intro there for the sake that there needs to be an intro rather than creating an interesting moment with the intro to feed the listener with before the drop. So I would focus on spending some time there and trying to flesh that out, because the drop is pretty solid, doesn't really need too much work, the mix is good, etc. But so that's kind of where I feel like it's at. There's nothing really that enthralling going on in these first sections. And then the second drop also sounds good. This section sounds a little bit thin right here. I think it needs a layer underneath in order for it to sound full. But that's pretty much it. I think that's just about everything I have for this track. It's sounding really, really good. Very impressive. Record labels, I could recommend Welcome Records, which is Keizo's label. I know they're very adamant about signing new talent, so it might be a good fit. You could always reach out to them. But very good work. Awesome stuff. Hopefully that helps you get it to the finish line. Good shit. All right. 129.18. We have that for Shizaru. All right, let's check. Cool, let's peep it, see where we're at. let's see here. So these sound really cool in this section. This section following feels a little bit long for after something that impactful. So maybe have this section condensed just in general. Now the drop, to comment on that, I think most of the things are really cool. The sounds are really, really strong. The execution is cool. The kick drum feels very buried. I would try to bring that out quite a bit. I can't tell if it's because of a lack of or not sufficient enough side chain, or if the kick itself is just too quiet, too hard to tell. Now, you asked about in particular about widening those basses. I would advise Dimension Expander, I think would do the best job here. You're very mono compatible right now. I have a mono switch right here. When I press the 3 key on my keyboard, it triggers. So if I listen,
Let's play.
and I switch back and forth, you're very, very mono compatible. So you can definitely widen that sound considerably. And it will still stay intact. So I would recommend Dimension Expander, and that I think would really fill it out a bit to where you want it to be. And then, yeah, get that kick drum bumping a little bit more, and I think you're sounding good. Yeah, that's pretty much it. This guy sounded awesome. I like the intro. It had me entertained the whole time. A lot of the comments I have for people in here is that the intros are boring. This was not boring. This kept me entertained. I really only just think this section might just be a little bit too long. I think it might be best to just run straight into the build-up after this big hit section. And then, yeah, for the drop, as we talked about, just widening that bass a little bit was something. You have plenty of room to get it done. It'll still be focal and in the center field. You're more than allowed to get some more stereo going on in there. It'll be fine. And yeah, that kick drum, and then that's about it. Good stuff, dude. This is awesome. I like this demo a lot. I agree. Gas, bro. Fucking love it. Good shit, dude. All right, moving forward, we're gonna go to Aaron. And Aaron, you're gonna be at 133.30. And I'm going to actually, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to end this video and start a new one just to be safe.